Okay, I'm going to get started. I'll start with an introduction, so if people come in late, they won't be missing anything substantive. I'm Darcy. I'm Darcy Merkur. I'm a partner at Thomson Rogers. I've been working here for 27 years, been a lawyer for 25 years. Hopefully I look too young to be a lawyer for 25 years. Thomson Rogers, for those who don't know, has been around for 90 years helping accident victims. I've got a lot of credentials. I'm not going to talk about them, but I think you'll find that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to plaintiff's personal injury law, and that I'm quite well read and knowledgeable on the area, and that my software does the math correctly. Over the years, I've been challenged 20 times, 100 times by people, and there hasn't been one person who's proven me wrong, but there is some confusion, and I understand why people get confused by the math. Let's just talk quickly about the history of the Ontario Personal Injury Damages Calculator. Back in 2007, I launched it through the legal publisher, then Carswell, now Thomson Reuters. I canceled that contract for 2025 because I found it archaic that they were still sending out key cards and CDs, and I just wanted to get it to people. When I launched in 2007, there was no way to mass email everyone. So I had to go that route to get it in wide circulation. I wasn't going to deal with the administration of putting it on a CD and sending it out. So that's why I originally licensed it. It was never really for profit. It was more for accolades and to help the community. I want the people, the vulnerable people that we represent, I represent accident victims, to have good representation, to help reduce lawyer errors and help with the math, which is my strong suit. I come from a commerce background. I was a bit of a math geek growing up. So I'm not here for the money. I'd love some online social media accolades, of course, but that's about it. I'm not looking for anything else. I'm going to start today with a demonstration of the most simplest versions of the software, the ones primarily used for mediators. And then I'm going to go very quickly. It'll only take me 2 or 3 minutes to go through that one. Then the one that's designed in part for plaintiffs' lawyers for another couple minutes, a simplified version that I launched this year. It's part of the Ontario Personal Injury Damages Calculator. And then I'm going to spend the majority of the time speaking about the Ontario Personal Injury Damages Calculator, which we call the Merkurator internally, because when I developed it internally, it was called the calculator, and my name's Merkur, so we called it the Merkurator, and everyone around here calls it the Merkurator. And I launched it because the colleagues I was working with here were brilliant lawyers, but some of them were really crappy at math. I think the math lawyers go to the business side, and the personal injury side is sometimes the most capable lawyers, but the most inept at math. So I launched this program to help a lot of my colleagues, and then they thought I should simplify it and launch it wider, which I have. If you have questions throughout, please put in the chat room. We're going to mute everyone. My colleague Danny Garris is there. He's going to be my co-host today. He'll mute everyone. He will relay the questions that are there that think should be answered along the way. Otherwise, I'll try to deal with them at the end. And if anyone has any comments or about my software questions, one of the beauties of launching it online is that I can update it. Before I had to update it only annually. Now I can update it whenever I want and tell people it's out there. I will post it on LinkedIn. So if you're not following me on LinkedIn, please do so that you're apprised of new launches of the version. Just as an FYI, I've dealt with a lot of cases. The math goes hand in hand with strategic thinking, and plaintiffs, lawyers, and defense lawyers use Parringer agreements, Merkurator agreements. I just did a deal with an excess insurer on a case that went to a successful jury trial in October. I have a fancy software that's used internally to evaluate the merits of these kinds of strategic deals, Merkurators, Parringers, and the rest of it. So if anyone ever wants to chat with me, totally free, just give me a call. I'll talk to you about your scenario, figure out if there's a way I can add value to the equation, and we can discuss that. So please, I try to be a friendly guy. Reach out anytime. And if you have comments about the software itself or things you want in it, please note so. And if you're following me on LinkedIn, and if there's something that you want me to do another one of these on that's more specific, post in the comments. And if enough people like it, I will set up another one on something specific. Okay, now I'm going to get started. We are going to start with the simplest version of the one of the pages of the software. Okay, we're starting really simple. So if you're seeing this saying this is easy, you're right, but it's math. The software is an Excel program, and these are downloadable for free on my profile page. This is the first time I've done a seminar where everyone should have it or can have it. Before it was licensed, so only the purchasers, a few hundred lawyers in Ontario, would participate. And now everyone can pull it up on their screen if they have it available and try it out on the go. So this is the Merkurator Mediation Genie for all. This is the one you could use at mediations. It's primarily for mediators. It could be useful for defense lawyers. It's useful for plaintiffs lawyers, but there's more complex stuff. The first question and ask, the software is designed where you only answer the yellow boxes. Everything else is blocked. You can't overwrite it to protect you from making errors or overwriting the formulas. So the first question is, well, what are you asking in partial indemnity costs? And I've added in the 2025 cost convention, which is 15% on the first $200,000 in damages and 10% thereafter plus HST. Before that, the typical convention was 15% on the first 100 and 10% thereafter, or you can put in anything you want. So let's try it with this new 2025 cost convention. So as you fill out that from the pull down, make that choice, it says, well, what are your disbursements? So anyone could put in the mediator, defense lawyer, plaintiff lawyer. Let's call it 15,000. Now you go to the next aspect. This is on the line. I hope everyone can see this, the total of damages line. So let's say we are asking for $250,000 in damages. It automatically calculates the cost convention cost of $35,000. Again, 15% the first 200 plus 10% thereafter, plus the HST of 4550 plus the disbursement. So the all-in number is 304,550. Now, defense lawyers will traditionally respond with an all-inclusive number, which can frustrate plaintiffs lawyers, especially ones who aren't great at math. The software is designed to solve that problem. So the defense says, no, we're not going to deal with your 304,550 all in or 250 plus plus. Let's offer them 150 all in. And they'll probably thinking they're handcuffing the plaintiff's lawyer because you got to do the math. You punch it in on the yellow line and it reverse engineers it for you. So it shows that it's really $115,000 in change in damages, plus a convention cost contribution towards costs, HST, and disbursements to get you to the 150 all in. Okay, so say you're negotiating costs. You can toggle this and go back to the old convention. Convention cost 15% on the first 100. 15% on the first, 100 and 10% thereafter. And the costs will adjust and the all-in numbers will adjust. So that's the beauty. If you take away the yellow numbers, it will go away. So this is the mediation genie in its simplest form. You can do fixed amounts. If you spend a lot of time and you want to ask for a fixed sum, you could change the percentage contributions you're requesting or they're offering or you're agreeing to. But that is the simplest form of the mediation genie. You just put in your disbursements numbers, you put in $400,000, $4 million, call it. It does the convention costs. It adds it all up. If they offer $2 million in response, it reverse engineers it so you can objectively tell your client what their offer equates to, assuming that the cost convention is adopted. Okay. If there are questions about that, throw it in the chat. I'm going to be doing the same thing again in a little bit more sophisticated form on the plaintiff's version of this mediation page right now. Okay, now we're going to a still simple version of the mediation genie page. This one is, there's a little bit more on the screen. I'll try to zoom in a bit more, but I'll just show you quickly what it is. It's just a one pager and there are a couple yellow cells. First thing is similarly, what are you asking for partial indemnity costs? So let's use the 2025 convention again. What are your disbursements? Okay, this is one that's designed, it says at the top, it's for plaintiff's counsel. And this is the one that's going to help you figure out what your fees are. So how much are you asking for disbursement? Let's go with our $15,000 example again. Then it asks you the question, it prompts you, right? It wasn't there before the question. It prompts you when you answer this question to go on to the next yellow box. Are the fees being charged as a formal contingency fee? And there's little pop-ups to remind you about the rules. For example, before July 1st, 2021, you could only charge contingency fees on the damages paid and not on costs. And post July 1st, 2021, you are entitled to charge contingency fees if your contingency fee agreement says so on costs too, but not on HST. And that's why I developed the software, because I fear that a lot of plaintiffs' lawyers are wrongly and technically improperly charging CFA percentages on damages plus cost plus HST when that's offside the Law Society guidelines on this point. So that's why I developed the software. I read it once, I programmed it once, it's accurate once. I don't have to look at it every time to figure out what I should do. So if you answer on costs 2, which is the modern day post July 1st, 2021 option, how much are you charging for solicitor client fees? You can use a pull down or you can use a fixed amount. Let's say we're charging 30%. Okay, so our fee agreement is 30% on cost plus damages. Again, so you answer that question, then you fill out the appropriate yellow box. So if we're asking for damages, you're at a mediation, you say, I want $500,000 in damages. It's inclusive of interest, I should note. The partial indemnity costs under the 2025 cost convention is $60,000 plus HST, plus your assessable disbursements, which I've said 15,000. So the all-in equivalent is 582,800. If you go down to this next section, which is different than the earlier version we looked at, it maps it out into a direction and account. It says, it sets out the contingency fees correctly, not on the HST, on the total amount, the HST, the disbursements. It shows the balance of the client, and it shows the net amount payable to the plaintiff. So the client who's tugging at your suit coat saying, how much do I get? How much do I get? In the old days when we used to do mediations in person, that's what happened. And you can quickly say, well, you're getting 377,960. And if you're asking yourself how much the law firm getting, inclusive of disbursements and HST, it's 204,840. So it maps it out. Defense responds and they say, well, we're going to offer them $250,000 all in. And again, it reverse engineers it for you to say it's 201,000 essentially, plus costs, plus HST, plus disbursements to get your grand all in total 250. It shows the client getting 156,000 after their appropriate CFA and $93,000 payable to the firm. If it was on damages only before July 1st, 2021, for example, it can do that too. So if you toggle that answer, these numbers, at least the contingency fee percentages and the amount allocated, will change. Okay, so these have all been adjusted since we adjusted that answer. Before it was, this one had 156. Under the old school, it would have been 166 to the client in this scenario. So that is a plaintiff's helpful tool to use at mediations to quickly calculate who gets what in various offers depending on contingency. It can also do non-CFAs for those who are still using those. If you answer no, you can still deal with cost plus situations in the old school situation. So that's all I want to talk about on the second simplified version before I get into the big picture one. Hopefully by now you've realized that it already can do something that will save you a lot of time and do it accurately, which is by far the most important part from our perspective. I do see a question about whether companies are accepting the convention. I think they are. I've had a handful of cases where they have. They have because the defense knows their costs are going up, their bills are going up, so shouldn't the plaintiffs? And we always have the right to assess our fees, and the convention was designed to stop the need to assess accounts. So I haven't had much issue at all. I think, and a lot of defense lawyers are also doing plaintiff's work, so they kind of get it too. So I encourage people to push for it. I think it's legitimate, but and hopefully you make progress. And if you do, please let me know or others know. We're going to move on to the more important and the most complex software. Let me just relaunch that because I didn't switch it on my. Oh, here I did. Okay, this is the Ontario Personal Injury Damages Calculator.
It's not up, Darcy. I think it fell.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I had to disable it for a second. Thank you, though. Okay, this is the Ontario Personal Injury Damages, the full version of the program. I'm just going to skip the Mediation Genie page, which I just showed you, is available here too. So the last one we just dealt with for plaintiffs is embedded within this program already. But this is the full program. And again, the concept is you answer the yellow cells. So it starts, there's a bunch of pages for those who are unfamiliar or limited experience with Excel. There's a basic inserts page, which is the question and answer. It needs some basic information. Then there's the DW1, which is damage worksheet 1. And there's various others, so you can run different scenarios. There's a future care cost analysis page, which I'll talk about, an accident benefit SABS interest page, which is not overly helpful now that they went to 1% years ago. Before, in the old days when it was 2% compounded, it was very helpful. The mediation Genie page, and it could pull it all into a direction account as well as a release. But let me show you how it works. And if you have it up on your screen, feel free to dabble with it as I go through it. I'm just going to spend 1 minute answering the prompts. So the first question is, well, what is your file name? So let's say Smith versus Jones. What's your file number? Just going to make up a number. What's your assessment date? Are you going to mediation? So let's go say we're going to a mediation in on April the 7th of 2025, next week. What was the date of the incident? And there's little pop-ups to help you if you find any of these confusing. I've had so many people have trouble putting the dates. Just type it in like you would a letter. Okay, date, month, space, date, comma, space, year. I can't believe I have to say that, but trust me, I've had so many questions over the years, people saying it didn't work. So the date of the incident, let's say it's February 1st, 2022, roughly 3 years ago. When was the claim issued? People say, why do you need that? Because your past pecuniary claims are based on the interest rate that applied under the Courts of Justice Act at the time of issuance. So it asks you, well, when did you issue your claim? If you haven't issued your claim yet, just put today's date and it'll do what it can. But if you have issued a claim, so let's say here we issued the claim on January 17th of 2023, a year and a bit after the accident. Was it a motor vehicle accident claim? Okay, this is crucial because if it's a motor vehicle case, as you'll see, it tells you the deductibles, it does the contrib, it knows everything. I've taught it how to do everything, all of the math. So let's say yes, that is where this program is the most useful, but it can be useful in med mal, slip and falls, every other case. It'll prompt you for OHIP and stuff like that. The date the notice given, again, that's applicable to car cases. You get prejudgment interest rate since the date of notice. So the date of incident here was February 1st. So let's make up a date a little bit, March 7th, 7th of 2022, okay, a month or so after the accident. The name of the injured person, let's call it Dave Smith. What's his gender? Because it's going to run your life expectancies. It's a male. What's his date of birth? Let's say September 7th of 1973. So he's roughly 50, 51, 52, something like that. Did he die? If you're doing a fatality, there's no deductibles in fatality. So you got to answer this question. Let's say he did not die. So you just use a pull down to say, no, how many FLA claimants? Let's say there's 2. You've got wife Smith and you've got kid Smith. Okay, there's no more yellow cells. So that, and at the bottom it says when all yellow cells are filled, click on the first damage worksheet page. So it reminds you to do that. But once the yellow cells are gone, you go to the next page. So here's where it gets good. This prompts you for the title. What's your title? So let's call it the plaintiff's assessment. Are you applying any contrib? Let's say for now, we're going to say no. We deny the seatbelt issue that they're raising, so we're going to say no. What do you want for gross damages? Hopefully, I'll blow it up a little bit so you can see it a little better in terms of sizing. What are you asking for your general damages? Damage assessment, general damages for Dave Smith. The guy suffered a bad head injury, let's say $200,000. You'll see this deductible column pop up. It shows it as 0. Why? Because it's over the vanishing threshold. It shows you your net amount. It calculates your prejudgment interest rate. Okay, it's not 5% because it's a car case and the rules changed a decade ago. You don't get the 5%. You get the prejudgment interest rate based on the looked up percentage, which in this case was 4%. So it footnotes it for you. It also footnotes here the person's life expectancy is 30.62 years. Reiterates he's a male. It calculates the precise age of 51.58, shows his date of birth, recalls the date notice was given. It calculates the number of years since the prejudgment interest notice letter and the number of years since the actual incident, because it's going to need all that information. So it footnotes it for you automatically. This is what you can do on your computer yourself. Now, just to show you what it does, if we drop this to 150,000, remembering this deductible, voila, the deductible pops up. Who remembers that it's exactly 46,790.05? No one. So it pops up, it calculates the net amount, it rejigs the prejudgment interest, same rate, but it recalculates it and shows you the total. Now, just to fast forward for a second, let's say we concede the seatbelt issue. We're prepared to give a 10% discount. A contrib column pops up in red. And nobody remembers the proper sequence between the deductible and contrib. I sure didn't in my first 10 years. I had to look it up every time. The software has it right. Trust me, it's got it right. So realize that, build trust in it, and you'll know it's doing it right. It'll calculate your contrib. It does the interest properly, and you've got it all solved for you. So let's go to the wife. Let's say the wife's claim is big. It's over the threshold, $85,000. Okay. And then we say, well, the kid's claim is big, and you're sitting there going, well, let's call it 65,000. Oops, I applied a number that's going to invoke the deductible. It reminds you, maybe I should be asking for a little bit more to get around that. So it kind of hints, think twice about your number. And I don't even remember what the FLA deductible is, but it knows it. Excuse me, I'll try to get, Danny, if you want to look it up for me, you can tell me. But when you get to 78,500, it's over the vanishing threshold. But I know it's in that zone. It does the contrib, but let's come up with a number that applies a deductible. You can see the math. So it does that, and you'll see here, it's totaling it all up as you go. Let's just show some other categories, past damages. Okay, so let's say you have a past housekeeping and home maintenance claim. You can use the pull down or you can type it in. So let's say we have a past housekeeping and home maintenance expense claim. P judgment interest rates. Because a housekeeping claim is traditionally one that's accrued over time, the convention is you use half rates. It's accumulated over time as opposed to an ambulance charge from the day of the accident where you use full rates from the date it was invoiced. So you apply the half rates. In this case, we're going to go from the incident date, or maybe we'll pick a date a month later when they were discharged or whatever else. How much are you asking for? So you can do this a million ways. You can come up with the number you're saving. So let's ask for $25,000. It calculates the contrib. It calculates the net amount. It calculates the appropriate prejudgment interest rates at the half rates because it's an accumulated benefit week over week as opposed to a fixed one from day one. And it does it correctly. For fancier users who are familiar with Excel and you want to do an amount per year, you could say, let's say it's $10,000 and you hit a multiplies by, and then you go down to the footnotes and it's been 3.18 years since the accident. So you can do that and it'll calculate that it's exactly $31,000 to the date. So you can tie it in to other footnote information for more sophisticated users, but I sure don't want to make it too complicated for novice users right now. So let's do one other example here, out-of-pocket expenses. These were incurred right after the accident. In this case, we're making up. So let's say it was from right after the accident of $20,000 for some expense. And you'll see the prejudgment interest rate is double because we're no longer using the half rate convention. There's a paid for past accident benefits, which isn't particularly useful these days unless it's a global mediation. You want to present everything in one. There's future damages specified. So sometimes you have an income loss report and you can put in your income loss report says it's $275,000 in income loss, calculates contrib, and it gives you the total. Now, in this case, you got some IRB credit you want to give for CPP disability. So let's say you've had the future benefits present value of $120,000. You can give credit for that. It adjusts the total to account for that in the proper sequence, which isn't necessarily favorable to plaintiff's lawyers, that's for sure, but objectively honest. So, normally as plaintiff's lawyers, you try to fudge the two together so you don't have to deal with the contrib less, but the correct way to do it is to take off the contrib and then to take off the benefits, which can gut your claim where there's a high contrib factor against, like in a single car accident against a tavern, for example. So it can calculate the less benefit amounts. Let's also go the future care costs I'll show you in a minute, but it can calculate the present value of future care cost reports for you and include it in your assessment. And then the future damages section is a great little tool. So let's say we have a future healthcare expense claim. When do you want to start it? Well, we got the mediation. Let's start it now. So it's precise age of 51.58. Ending at what age? Well, let's go to life. And you say you want $22,500 per year from now until life to cover his future healthcare expenses. It does the life expectancy. It is consistent with the McKellar's chart. So you're saying, well, I use the McKellar's charts. Great. It's the same thing. It may be a little more precise, my software, because the McKellar's charts will go by 51 or 52, and you'll have to sort of choose, or if you're sophisticated, you could try to figure out the midpoint. But this is doing precisely the prorated between 51 and 52. So it does the multiplier for you. It totals it up. Again, you can deal with the less benefit section here in the proper sequence if you need to do that, and it'll adjust the total. So you can do future income loss here too. Okay, you can either type it in or use the pull downs. Let's say that's starting now, but it's only going until age 60, let's say 70. We're pushing for age 70 in this scenario. How much are they losing? $50,000 per year. It calculates the life expectancy until age 70 in this example, which isn't exactly 18.42 years, which is the exact number of years, but it calculates the multiplier associated with that having regard to mortality factors and applying the Ontario discount rate, which can be adjusted because some people argue that, for example, healthcare costs are at a productivity, they should be inflation minus 1%. So they use an Ontario -1 rate instead, which would adjust the numbers and increase them. So if you're going that route, you would be in a position to make that argument without having to hire an expensive actuary to do it. Obviously, you're going for trial. Going to trial, you're going to have an expert quantify your future healthcare subject to an agreement with defense counsel. But where you don't have to, for the purpose of a negotiation and sometimes mediation, you can do most of this yourself. Okay, so here's this example. And what you do before you printing, which not many people realize, is you go to this A1 cell top left corner of the spreadsheet, and there's a thing called blanks or not blanks. You just unclick that, and it condenses it into a one-page summary of your assessment. It totals it at $1.5 million. It references your contrib percentage of 10%, and you have it. You print this to PDF, you circulate it to the mediator, you circulate it to the defense counsel, you give it to your client if you want to keep them in the loop on precisely how you've quantified your claim. So that's the first damage worksheet page. Now let's get ready. That's not going to be your last offer. So let's get ready. We'll go to damage worksheet 2. So let's say plaintiff's proposal. This is going to be your first offer. Let's say in this case, there was more contrib than 10%. There's really, the defense is pushing for 25. So let's concede 15%. How much you want for real gross damages? It logs what you did last time, 150,000 in that last example, because I had adjusted a few times. But in this case, we're going to go down even. It's now 125,000. And it shows you what you did for the wife. So let's go a little lower there. And this time for the child, go a little lower there. It reduces it. It recalculates it. Again, I'm not going to take you through all that, but you have a bunch of chances to adjust your assumptions and reflect it before printing this. You just hide this column. You click on the column, you hit the right click and you hit hide. So that when you print it or send it or print it to PDF, you can have your whole case in one. Obviously, the numbers are lower because I haven't dealt with the other sections. So I'm racing through it because I know people are precious on time, and I want to just show you what it can do, and then I'll dig in on anything that people want. So there's 7 of these pages so that when the defendants present an offer, you can assess theirs as well. So let's say, well, the defendants are trying to challenge your math. So the defendant's proposal, they say they want 25% contrib. They're going to pay $100,000 for generals, but they don't want to do all the math for you. They want to pay the wife 50 grand and the kid 40 grand. And they'll pay future income until only age 65 and only of $10,000. It calculates all of this for you. Again, totals it up. You can hide the logs if you want to print it, and you can figure out what the true evaluation, inclusive of interest, because interest is something that often gets wiped out. Now, before I move on from here, if you change the answer on the basic inserts question to no for a car accident, number one, it doesn't ask you this question about the date of notice and whether it's a fatality. I'll leave the answers there. It won't screw up the program. But the whole deductible column is gone. It disappears. And the prejudgment interest rate is now 5% because in non-car cases, the mandated rate is 5%, subject to the court saying otherwise. So it correctly does the prejudgment interest rate in non-motor vehicle cases. Also, when you have past claims, the OHIP subrogated interest comes up as one of the options to remind you, hey, if you're using the pull downs, OHIP's got a claim in these non-car cases. So be mindful of that. So it does all of that for you. I'm going to go back to being a car case, but I just wanted to demonstrate that. I'm going to jump to the future care cost page. This is a great tool. It is the solution to how to deal with late served future care cost report because you were slow to get it out, or the defense just serves you with one a few days prior to mediation. You don't know what it costs, and you have a hard time getting an actuary, an accountant to figure it out really quickly. You can do it yourself. So let's take our future care cost report. Let's say services is a heading. Okay, the first service, they're recommending OT. Is it a one-time cost or an annual cost? Well, your future care cost report, I'm going to blow this up a bit, says that it's an annual cost and they want $4,400 per year starting now until age 55 using the Ontario discount rate. Present value is it. Okay, and the discount rate moves by the year. It knows the 2025 discount rate. And then they say OT long-term. Excuse my typo there. And that's also an annual cost. And that's lesser, $3,300 from age 55 to age 65. Present values it. And then it says AOT super long-term. And it says an annual cost for $22,000 from age 65 to life. And it does the life expectancy, does the multiplier, and it calculates it all for you. It can also do one-time cost. So it says housing assessment. You need a housing assessment. Okay, so you can throw that in, but they say you don't need one now, you'll need one eventually. So it's a one-time cost of $8,500 and they want to do it in 5 years. So call it 56. Now for sophisticated users, instead of, if I said 5 years, you get these reports that says in 5 years, then you can do it. You can guess the age. 5 years, he's 51 and a half. So roughly 56, you can put in 56.5. Or for extremely sophisticated users, you can do the equal sign, click on the age footnote and hit a +5. And it'll tell you the precise age. And the reason I do it this way as a sophisticated user and a programmer of the software is because when the mediation date changes, when defense says we're not ready, let's do it in 3 months, it adjusts all the date. If you switch the assessment date, it'll switch the age and it'll switch what it's pulling in for the starting date. So you can do your whole list here. SLP services. I'll just do a couple more. Maybe there's one more here. So let's say it's $5,000 from now until age 65, calculates it. And again, you go to this fancy A1 cell, and let's call this the present value of FCC report of Miss Smith, of Miss Herbert, dated blank, okay? You put in your little title, you do that non-blanks trick I showed you, it totals it up with a grand total here. You print it to PDF, you attach it. Going back to your damage worksheet page, if you untoggle these by going back to that non-blank cells, you'll be able to see everything again. You can go to this future care cost page and pull the data in. So it says you can use this pull down saying see attached page, and it pulls in the $139,000 from this, and it totals it in. So you can attach it as page 2 to your damage assessment and print it with that information. And all of a sudden you got your case down to 2 pages, including the present value of the future care cost report with specifics of where the money's spent on the services. There's an accident benefit page, which I'm not going to spend too much time on. But if you're trying to figure out the value of IRBs and they never paid it, it's a self-employment situation, they're driving you crazy, it's $400 per week. Let's say it's weekly. Okay. When does it start? When's the first payment owed? Well, let's remember the incident date we used here. It's footnoted here is February 1st. IRBs aren't payable for the first week after the accident. So let's say the first date it's owed is February 8th, 2022. And the last payment due is now. We're using an April 7th mediation date. So we put that in. It calculates as 165 missed payments. The principal amount owed is 66,000, the 20,800 times the number of years. And the compound interest under the SABs, the statutory accident benefit schedule, if anyone doesn't know, is 13 grand and change. So it can do your past SABs quantifications with those yellow cells filled out. You can also use that same A1 cell to make it more printable. Then you have the mediation page, which the only difference on this page other than the plaintiff's version is you can say yes to using it from your worksheets, right? Which we just went through the damage worksheet. So let's use the one from damage worksheet 1. How much are you asking for costs? Let's use the Merkur convention, what I call here, convention cost 2025. Say the disbursements are 15,000. What are you charging for fees? Let's cost on damages of 30%. And this blue cell populates. So you're looking for 1.845 all in, to use the all in lingo that defense traditionally use, in part because that's the way they deal, but the consequence of it is confusion to an unsophisticated math-oriented, non-math-oriented plaintiff's lawyer. So it calculates it out, and in response, they say, well, how about $1 million all in? And it reverse engineers it to show it's really 874. You can see the gap, and you can say, well, how about $1,035,000 plus costs? And it reverse engineers it or calculates it all like that. Now, you make a deal. We've settled the case for $1 million all in. You can answer yes to this question. Use the calculations in this column for the direction and release. If you say yes, it pulls it into a direction and account. So you put to ABC Law Firm, and you put your address, Toronto, okay, whatever. And then here it is, the exact information we just had, the net amount of 688,428.31 net to the plaintiffs. Now, sometimes you have debts. Okay, so maybe you have some solicitor client disbursements that you don't want to call assessables. You consult with an engineer. So you can call solicitor client disbursements. Okay, and you can say to ABC Law Firm as well. And you've got $5,200 in that. So it adjusts the net amount from that, and you can put it and say you have some protected accounts. There's some providers that are owed money with your client's instructions. So you can say protected accounts, and you can put in various providers, and you can have the total set out, and you can put in various, and the total is 17,500. It adjusts the total amount payable, and you just fill this up, put in Toronto where they're signing it, and the yellow cells should go away. These ones you still have to put in the address, and voila, you can print this and have your client sign with not only the instructions to settle, but also who's getting what. Now there's 3 signature lines because you have some plaintiffs. So in the 665 net to the clients, let's say we're going to give 30,000 net to the wife and 30,000 to the kids. So you can go back to here, that's what I do, and I say net of $30,000 under their signature line, because this is going to pull into their signature line, net of $25,000. And here you could put in the precise amount, or you can just put something like balance. And then when you go to the direction and account page, it shows those signature information. So when they sign it, it shows that the wife is netting 30, the kid's netting 25, and Dave is getting the balance, and you can put in the precise amount if you want. And lastly, it can pull it into a release. The release is very rarely used. Defense counsel and insurers are quite particular, but it can be used in consideration. You can make payable to, who are we suing here? Jones and Co. et al. And you can put in their names you can put in the basic information, and you can have them sign a release where you're dealing with an adjuster or somebody who just wants a standard basic release. These yellow cells can go away too if you put in answer a couple of them. There they go. That's the software in half an hour. I can talk forever about it. So I welcome feedback at this point. We can unmute for people who have verbal questions. We can just let people type it in, which is my preference, so that somebody doesn't get sidetrack us. But that's it. I don't know how people work without having a software run the deductibles, the contrib, the life expectancies, the multipliers. I applaud those who have been able to capably do it. And there are some are great at math, no problem. But it solves so much work, and it makes it all easy, and now it's free. So I'm hoping people start using it more regularly. I think it'll cut down errors. It'll make everything more accurate, and you won't forget about things like prejudgment interest and convention costs and stuff like that. Okay, let's go to questions. If people have any, throw them in the chat box, or Danny, you can unmute people as if they want to stick up their hand or something like that. Any way you want. I'm here for until 1, so I'll stick around. I answered the question. Oh, Danny put in the deductible of $77,982. So like it knows the stupid stuff. Like, what if the amount allocated is exactly that? Is the deductible apply or not? I don't remember, but the software does it right because I researched it when I programmed it, and I made sure I had it all right. For the mediation genie, is there a way to have OHIP's repayment included as a reduction for the net to plaintiff? I think I addressed that in the mediation, in the direction account. So yes, you can put OHIP payable to the Minister of Finance. And sometimes I put in
Darcy, your screen's not shared.
Oh,
just in case if you want to throw that up and show them that.
I will. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so I'm back to this mediation genie page. I just wrote in. I'll go backwards for a second. So where we left it last time, it had protected accounts, but instead of protected accounts, let's say OHIP. And who's it payable to? It's payable to the Minister of Finance. So you put that in. And sometimes I put in just to emphasize to the client or to OHIP that everyone's taking a hit because of contrib or fees or whatever else. I said account of, sub-row account of $42,000. And then you show that they're taking $26,500 to see that they're getting a discount. They're giving you a discount. They're taking less than they deserve because of both fees and because of contributory negligence and risk and the rest of it. So yes, you can deal with it, the OHIP dynamic, in the direction account.
Darcy, we have 2 similar questions in the chat box. People want to know how to get an updated version every year.
Okay,
so the new numbers come out.
Well, so because I've been licensing it to Carswell for 18 years, every year I would publish it as soon as possible. As soon as possible is whenever the deductibles come out. The deductibles traditionally come out between December 1st and December 31st. One year they did it on December 28th, so I couldn't prepare the software until January, in the first week in January. Last year they did it fairly early December. So I will publish it within a week of them putting out the new deductibles. The new discount rate also has to get kicked in, and I've, where it doesn't know the Courts of Justice Act pecuniary past interest rate, because it was prepared, the last version, January 27th. So if you're doing with an incident where you issued in May, coming up next in this May, it won't know the exact, it'll put in italics to show that it's an estimate based on the last quarter. I will start updating it as regularly as people want. In terms of the annual one, I will update it in December for sure, and I'll launch it on my profile page, and I'll post it on LinkedIn, which is another reason to make sure you're in my circle, and you can download it for free. My intention is to keep it for free forever. I really like to help people get this right. I'm really hoping that people start using it more effectively, because we see people make these errors. We end up getting involved with a lot of cases that are sometimes older or sometimes that are settled. We get calls, and you see a lot of errors when it comes to contingency fees, when it comes to directions, when it comes to deductibles, contrib, the math, the rest of it. So I'm hoping it gets more widely adopted. It's free. I will start updating it if there's any new big change, I'll update it right away and I'll launch something. Otherwise, I'll probably do it annually, or maybe every quarter, or maybe every half. If it's quite well used, I'll start doing it more often. I'd be happy to help. It doesn't take me to add the new deductibles. It takes me an hour. I go back into the software. I reprogram it a bit. I have to error check it, but it's not a big deal for me. I'm happy to do it anytime. Okay. People are welcome to stick around and ask questions, or if they have to bail, I totally understand. I've covered everything I intended to cover, but I wanted to leave time for more sophisticated users or questions. For those who are thanking me, you're very welcome. I really hope that it proves useful to your practice. Really reach out to me with questions. And if you have, I would like to improve it even more. So if people have things that they think are missing or that they would benefit from being embedded in it, I would be happy to include it. Okay, we can unmute all, Danny, if you want. And if people want to jump in with any questions, they can. As people are leaving, I'll stick around. Thanks, Ron, for your comments. I do appreciate it. Mohammed, you as well.
I have a question, Darcy.
Sure.
So you briefly went over it. You said there's some advanced tools and you're going over only the basic ones right now. Could you briefly go over some of the, quote, more advanced tools? Or
yeah, the more advanced tools deal with the linking. It's more of an Excel aspect. So on the future care cost page, if you do it right as a sophisticated user and tie all of your ages to the person's age by linking it to the age cell, then, so let's just try it. So this is from now until, it's not age 55, but let's put this age plus 4 years. Okay. And let's go from this age. So that the long term, it's going to start where the last one left off. So equals, and then catch this cell. So it adopts the cell earlier, which is not 50.5. It's a moving target. If I adjust, it'll move with it. That's why you do it that way. So you tie it to this plus 2 years. And then this one, you tie it back to this and you go to life. And then let's go use this one. Let's start it from this age date plus 3 years. And, oh, excuse me, I did a typo there, plus 3 years. So they're starting at 54, and let's go until age 60. And this one is going to go, I know it doesn't make sense, but 60 until equals that plus 15 years. The report says you need 15 years. Let's call this SLP. Okay, so this should be at annual cost. I should adjust that. It makes sense. Okay, so this is SLP short term, and that one's long. If you go, this is based, okay, so you see the numbers now. If we go back to the basic inserts page and your mediation gets delayed for a year. Now let's see if this works correctly. You adjust the date, and all of a sudden your person's 52.58, and all of these dates have adjusted. So that's a sophisticated aspect that some users might use, for example. So that's one thing that I tell people around here to use more often. What else can be for more sophisticated? You can use The less benefits come into play a lot to calculate the present value of benefit streams. Danny, can you think of anything else that more sophisticated people are using? What else do we do in here? I think most of it is just Excel sophistication, to be honest, to tie all the pages together and to have everything work in sync, especially when it's a moving target when it comes to the assessment age. I'm gonna look in the chat box for any questions. Okay, so people are welcome to leave. I don't have anything more to say. If anyone has any questions, stick around. I'll stick around to see if anyone raises their hand or unmutes and asks a question. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Hopefully you learned something useful, okay?